Okay, it's the great and glorious, soon to be famous one day, Nick Dutch back on the camera yet again. Now, thanks to the whole Christian versus Wiccan spat, I've developed an interest in trying to find out much more about the ideas surrounding this concept called Wicca. I decided that I was being a bit silly, and what I should do is research more heavily. So what I did is I created a 15-video playlist in which I went through all of the 13 principles of Wicca, one video for each principle, plus one introduction, plus one conclusion. I discovered that I actually had very strong agreement with all of the 13 principles. That's all of them, which would suggest that if the definition of a Wiccan is someone who follows the 13 principles, then I am a Wiccan. However, I also discovered that these 13 principles were applicable to the vast majority of humanity. This would imply that the vast majority of people in the whole wide world are Wiccans, or indeed that there is no definition to a Wiccan, and maybe that's part of the wisdom of the actual principles themselves. The only way that these principles could be taken in a dogmatic manner is through misinterpretation or treating the principles in a straw man argument kind of manner. Or indeed not thinking about the meanings of all of the words in the principles. So, my question to you is, are these principles the definition of what a Wiccan is rather than what a Wiccan is not? I personally think that would not be the case. Secondly, are these principles actually guidelines to remind us of things that are essentially good and true and right, so we can become more balanced people? Thirdly, is there a definition of what a Wiccan is? You know, help me out here. I want your video responses. These 13 principles are very applicable to the members of the atheist community. They're very applicable to members of the Christian community. Very applicable. They're very applicable to members of Islam, Judaism, Sikhism, Hinduism, all the rest of them. And so I personally feel that these 13 principles are guidelines, and are there to remind us of things which are right to help us stay balanced people, rather than to say, this must be obeyed. When I read that list on controversial.com, there was nothing there to say that these are the fixed, finite rules you have to obey. There's even one principle that says we do not recognize any authoritarian hierarchy, and that shows that you don't even have to obey. It's written in there in the principles. You don't have to obey authority. And if the authority is the principles, you don't even have to obey the principles if you're following the principles. Which sounds a bit odd, but on the other hand, it does make sense. It's telling you not to take life too seriously, not to take religion too seriously, which is a very good thing. I mean, are there people who break these things? Yeah. I mean, the principle which says our only animosity to Christianity and other religious parties, they say they're the one and only true way. But there are people, despite the complexities of the interpretations of these 13 principles, who are laying down the law as to what is and what is not a Wiccan, when essentially that goes contrary to the particular principle I've just mentioned. Then there's another principle saying that calling yourself a witch doesn't make you a witch, and that's talking about applying titles to yourself. So can you therefore, apply the title of Wiccan to yourself and then be considered to be a great and glorious, powerful person? No. You can apply the title Wiccan to yourself and see that as, the starting point of a journey. Now that makes sense. But that particular principle is very much talking about titles and their importance or lack of it. The main emphasis of all of these principles just seem to be about personal growth, personal development, accepting that you're not perfect, accepting that you're just human. You're going to make mistakes, and you've got a lot more to learn. That's what the whole thing is about. Literally, the whole thing. So, it was very interesting for me to see that type of Wiccan thought. But it didn't really clarify whether these people who call themselves Wiccan are any different to the atheists. Anyway, if I work out how, I'll leave a link to my 15 video playlist on the side there. I want your thoughts. I want your video responses. I want your text comments. I want you to shout at the camera at me, whatever, and let me know your thoughts. Because my feeling is that the purpose of these 13 principles is to point out that there are no rules. And it's about acceptance, growth, change, balance, harmony, and all the sort of things that humans try and aspire to anyway. Alright, good fortune, God bless, look after yourself, God and or goddess and or none of the above bless. Speak to you soon.